of like, if this is your first time here at One Church, welcome. This is an amazing community. It's been a really healing space for me to be in a place where I can bring all of myself and worship fully, and that's what this kind of place is, and welcome. And just so you know, the numbers are a little light this week because half the church is in Mexico doing a mission trip and helping with building projects down there. So you're getting a more intimate, smaller group tonight, which is pretty cool. And I was really happy when Angie asked me to speak because I have something that's been rolling around in my brain that I wanted to share. And so I'm going to just kind of share with you some of the thoughts tonight that I've been having that have been helping me a lot personally. And in case you're not acquainted with me at all or unacquainted with my story at all, just as a little bit of background. I used to be a pastor in a conservative denomination called the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it's been about a year and a half now, but it feels more like 20 years ago. I came out very publicly and as bisexual and as affirming of LGBT people and relationships and gender identity, and promptly lost my job. And since then, I've been doing a lot of advocacy, and I'm working on a book now encouraging those in that denomination to be open and affirming and supportive. And within that whole fallout from all of that, that's a small statement to say, but within the whole fallout from all of that has been a lot of just a lot of conflict, as you can imagine. A lot of anger that's come my way and a lot of anger that's come out of me. I've usually managed to do pretty well not letting that come out on social media, praise the gods, but but just feeling a lot of anger and walking around with a lot of anger and walking around with a lot of resentment and having a really hard time engaging with people who are inside this system that has been so destructive to me and who are participating in that and building that up. After having come to see it in another way, realizing how destructive it is and wanting other people to not be stuck in the same place I used to be stuck, right? So through that process, I have been trying to kind of come to a place of less anger, partly because I want to be able to make a difference in the world. And it's really hard to keep engaging with something that fills you with so much anger and pain, right? Because anger and pain, those are sides of the same coin. I don't know, if you've heard that phrase that mad masks sad, right? There's sides of the same coin of just that feeling of hurt and that feeling of anger. And maybe your story is actually pretty similar to mine in a congregation like this, or maybe your story is wholly different than mine. But at some point in life, unfortunately, we all have that experience of being betrayed. We all have that experience of, even if it's not to us directly, just because we have a heart and care for other people, feeling that sense of justice that someone has done something evil and wrong, that needs to be opposed, and that needs to be stopped, and that needs to be ended. I know we're really into the Enneagram 8 in this church, or the Enneagram in this church, and I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, which is the challenger. And so when you're an 8 and when you're a challenger, anger is like a very comfortable space, right? It's a very comfortable space to be in. And that conflict with somebody when you know that you're right is a very comfortable space to be in. It's not something that I naturally view as problematic. It's something that I naturally feel kind of okay with. And the idea, that somebody is doing something wrong and hurtful and awful, and that I'm not supposed to stand up and fight against that, I'm not supposed to oppose that injustice, is really not okay with me. So I really skew on the side of being angry. And so what I'm sharing with you today is as someone who struggles with this, not as someone who has figured it out. So I want to share with you a real something that happened recently that really got me thinking in this direction. I had posted, who knows what, I think it was something about just this awful thing that the current administration is considering of trying to erase the possibility of transgender people from a legal perspective. And just the people who I know and respect and love and care about so much, and that I know that the implications of that for their lives is it gets my blood boiling. So I had posted on that, and someone who really believed in another social justice cause that I had posted about, but really didn't believe in this one, got on and started talking about his perspective, which I wasn't really looking for. And that perspective was, trying to say, well, but, feelings can't be measured. It's not like a hard science, and it's a social construction, this LGBT thing. And when you really think about it, it's like an identity that people choose, and it's not. So it was kind of along those lines, and saying, the reason why homosexuality was taken out of the DSM, the Manual for Mental Health, was because of political reasons, and this and that and this and that. Now, I know those things not just to be a matter of opinion, and I have an opinion on the different side. I know several of those he said to be historically and actually false. I know this to be the case from the study I've done, from the research I've done. Like, I know it to be false, right? But this person was just saying these things, and I came back with the same tone, and I was trying to kind of engage in a factual way with what he was saying. It was kind of this back and forth, and then this guy just almost seemingly out of nowhere, just gets furious with me and tells me about how, I was following you for all these other things, but you really lost me now. Like, you just lost me now because you're totally unreasonable and you won't even listen, and then blocked me, of course, right? People love doing that to me. I don't know. I don't think I've ever ranted on someone and then blocked them. Like, if I'm going to rant on you, I'm going to give you a chance to rant back. But anyway, so that was the situation, right? And that's not a particularly unique situation. Like, you guys have all seen that kind of thing happen, even if you haven't participated in it yourself. But I just remember sitting back and thinking, okay, this person at the other end of their computer or phone or whatever does think that they're being reasonable. They do think that they're being reasonable. I presented them, however, with things that were actually factually, historically true, and they didn't want to listen to those things. And yet, what happened? I know enough about this person to know that this person was not one of these people who just runs around with a chip on their shoulder, angry at everyone, feeling persecuted because a baker in Colorado can't bake a cake, whatever. I know that this person wasn't that kind of a person, so what on earth happened? So here's what I'm trying to figure out, and into this, I want to bring a text from the Bible. Can I say from the best part of the Bible? And I don't think that no matter what your religious or not religious perspective is, whether you're a conservative Christian or an avowed atheist or whatever that means, avowed atheist, I think that we should all maybe be able to agree that this is the best part of the Bible. It's the Sermon on the Mount. And in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 43, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even Gentiles do the same?" Gentiles, we're Gentiles, guys. "You therefore must be perfect." Or it's a Greek word, telos. Another translation would be, you need to be complete. You need to go all the way. You need to finish this love thing. You need to be complete as your heavenly Father is complete in your love, not just a partial love. So, as a Christian and somebody who desires to follow the teachings of Jesus, and as I believe that this right here is at the very heart and center of all of Scripture, it's like the thing that you view the other parts of Scripture through, right? It's that central. Believing as I do these things, I have to think that it's not enough simply to write that guy off and simply to say, oh, he's a bigot, which somebody else on the thread was doing. Maybe that's why I got mad. To simply say he's a bigot, he's a hateful person, to write him off. There's got to be more to it than that. So love. What does it mean to love? And what does it mean to love even our enemies? Because I think those definitions of love, like Jesus were talking about, if we only love our brothers, our sisters, those who are close to us, whether they're family or ideologically close to us or our spouse, if we love only those people, it's not enough. So a definition of love that encompasses only those people who are close to us, that's not what Jesus was talking about. So what was Jesus talking about when he said to love even the Gentiles, which for the perspective of a Jewish person, those are the ones who are persecuting you, right? What does it mean to love even the Gentiles, even the oppressor, even the people who hate you, who despise you? Elsewhere in the same chapter, Jesus says, even those who persecute you, to pray for those people and care for those people. What does love mean when love has to extend that broadly? When love has to be something that encompasses all those people, essentially everyone, right? Everyone who the rain falls on, Jesus is saying. If the rain falls on that person, then you love that person because that's the way the love of God is. So, what does love look like when it encompasses everyone? And my definition of love that I've come through this process is that love is seeing the humanity in every person, even our enemies. So love is seeing how I am connected to this other person and this other person is connected to me. We all share a common humanity. This is not someone who's totally different and who's totally separate from myself, but this is a person who's in and within my human family. So I want to unpack that a little bit more. And I want to contrast it actually with something else. This is another gift that I was blessed with this morning. A friend of mine who's just a very brave, very kind person who was posting about what it means to be an open and affirming church. And someone got on this thread just defining what it is to be an affirming church and decided to respond with this. What you may not understand, I just want to warn you that this could bring something up for you. It's really bad. So if you need to plug your ears and hum or leave or whatever, this is really bad. What you may not understand is that most men are repulsed by the idea of men having a physical relationship with another man. It's naturally wired in their brain that way. And when I say repulsed, I am understating it, let alone seeing PDA. This is something that not only comes naturally, but is not something that most straight men have a desire to change. Why can't gay men just love and accept men how they are and stop trying to force people to think in unnatural ways? So that brings up a lot of emotion. Let's strip it down for a second to what this man is actually saying. And what he is actually expressing is disgust, right? He's expressing disgust, and he's saying that it's okay for him to make that disgust the foundation of how he sees other people. Like, that's okay for him to do that. So disgust is an emotion that has entered the political discourse, particularly, a lot more than it has ever been, right? Like, it's not okay. It's not enough to just disagree with the policies anymore. like you have to find the other side disgusting. Just to find the side abhorrent and disgusting. I've heard a lot about what the opposite of love is, but I want to propose that the opposite of love, and I'm stealing this from an interview I saw with John Hyatt, that the opposite of love is not fear, hate, whatever. The opposite of love is disgust. Because disgust is an impulse and an emotion that we have in response to something disgusting, to something that's rotting, to something that's dangerous to even touch or be near or see or smell. It's a very physical, primal feeling of revulsion. And it is the absolute opposite of humanizing someone. It's the furthest you could get away from seeing someone as human and another person like yourself. It's the furthest you could possibly go from that. Disgust. And this disgust leads to some really terrible things. This disgust is responsible for things like scapegoating, which says all of our problems are because of this person, in order to cover up their problems, in order to create an enemy, in order to solidify their own power, right? Because people turn to a leader when they are afraid. So let's make people afraid and disgusted of these people, which is what Jews, for example, have been throughout history because of how Christianity has treated them, which is what LGBT people have been throughout history, which all kinds of marginalized people have been treated this way throughout history, treated with disgust. If I despise them, I can blame them for everything. This is absolutely, completely, totally the sentiment behind the Holocaust. Absolutely. The Holocaust was, Jewish people, it was Jehovah's Witnesses, it was disabled people, it was gay men. And Hitler literally called gay men unnatural. Like, that was the literal law that was used in order to kill them in the Holocaust. Actually, literally, factually, historically. That was the sentiment behind it. So, can someone become so consumed with disgust that they lose their very humanity? And when we think about someone like Hitler, this is actually what we think about. We think about someone so consumed with disgust that they lose their humanity. We don't treat Hitler like a human, right? We treat Hitler like a monster. He's a monster that we summon in order to just show how disgusting other people are and how they need to be written off. That's the way we treat Hitler. There's other people we treat like that as well. Just monsters. This idea, a monster isn't someone you love, right? A monster is someone you write off, you despise because they're not human. They don't need to be considered. They don't need to be nothing. And do you see what I'm doing now? Does anyone catch what I just did? I just flipped around, and this is exactly what we fall into when we try to identify the disgust in someone else. We can create that disgust in ourselves. And we can start dehumanizing and disgust and calling a monster to someone else, which is the exact thing that they were doing to us. Does anyone know who Desmond Tutu is? I hope that name rings a bell. Truth and Reconciliation Council. Pretty much the best thing that's ever happened on planet Earth is the Truth and Reconciliation Council, which is Desmond Tutu was the leader of that, helping many ideas from Nelson Mandela and helping South Africa to heal from apartheid. And they also used it in Rwanda, helping them heal after the Holocaust there. It wasn't implemented perfectly by any means, but this man knows what it means to forgive and find the humanity in all people. And I was reading a book of his called The Book of Forgiving, which is so good. It's amazing. And he was talking in here about a newspaper article he read about someone who had gone out and murdered multiple people. Just like a mass murderer, right? I don't remember if this was a terrorist or just someone who had some other reasons or whatever it was, a mass murderer. And the newspaper was saying, this man is a monster. And Desmond Tutu, being the man that he is, wrote a letter to the editor that was published, of course, that said, very unpopularly, this man is not a monster. This man did monstrous things, but this man is not a monster. We share in the humanity of this man. We can't write him off as a monster and think that we're incapable of such atrocities. You didn't live his life. How do you know who you would have been if you would have lived his life? And Tutu insists that in doing this, we are not in any way taking away from the horrid nature of what these people have done. And I agree, and this is why, because monsters aren't responsible. You know, when Godzilla is attacking the city, no one comes along and says, that Godzilla, he just is really mean. You know, somebody needs to put him on trial for what he's done, right? Like, nobody thinks that. He's a monster. He needs to be destroyed. We take away, actually, the moral accountability of a person when we call them a monster. If we recognize their humanity, then we're placing on them the full responsibility that not only did they do this, but they could have done something else. That they could have been a better person. That they stand before us guilty of doing a monstrous thing, and guilty specifically because we do share a humanity with them. And that we ourselves are capable of doing those same things as well. One of the biggest problems in society is that often those people who have been oppressed and pushed down, when they get power, they turn around and do the same thing. So how do we ever find peace? How do we ever find peace? And so we find a dramatically different way of life that is proposed here. You dehumanize people, you write them off, you say this person is a bigot, this person is racist, this person is just homophobic, they're a horrible person. Or, and this might seem like a slight distinction, but I don't think it is. This person has a bigoted mindset. This person has a racist mindset, racist thoughts, racist beliefs, racist ideas. But they're a person and they're a human. And actually, as much as politically correct language gets, put down in society, one of the things they will teach you, if you go to any kind of a school for, any kind of like APA, psychology, mental health, to refer to people as people. There aren't schizophrenics. There's people with schizophrenia, right? And that is an important distinction. It's the humanization of all people. It's the humanization of all people. There aren't gays. There's gay people. There aren't straights. What can we do and how can we change our perspective in order to humanize the people around us? And I would argue that when we do this, the only reason is not, about the responsibility of that person. It's not just about all those things, but it's also about our own spirituality and our own humanity. Because to be human is to be in relationship with others. There's no such thing as like a detracted man is an island. Like, we all know that's a lie, right? You literally, if you stop interacting with people, will literally lose your mind. Like, you actually will. There's no such thing as existing in as a human without other humans. The basic nature of our humanity is connection to humanity. And when we dehumanize other people, we constrain and we lose a piece of our own humanity. We lose a piece of who we are. Our world becomes smaller, our spirituality becomes anemic. We waste away in that sense, like we lose something about who we could be. Even we just dehumanize people who are engaged in evil acts. We make our world smaller. And so it's something we do for ourselves as well. But it's also something I am finding gives me a lot of hope. Because when I'm consumed in this anger and this fight about all the unrighteousness and injustice in the world, which, believe me, is definitely something I do, I can tend to lose hope sometimes. I get overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. And the more people that you write off, they're just a bigot, they're just hateful, they're just selfish, they're just greedy, the more unchangeable those problems start to feel. And the more immovable those things start to become. And the more hopeless the whole thing is, and the more it's just all about just anger. I don't want to live my life that way. And I also don't want to disengage from these things because they're so important. I don't want to get burned out. I want to keep going, but I don't want to live my life in anger. And I'm finding that the more I'm able to embrace this idea that there's this humanity in this person that I'm talking to, the more I'm able to have some hope. And I actually did that when I read those disgusting words this morning, is I thought to myself, this is a person. This is a human writing these words. There's more to this person than these words, and yet these words are coming from something, somewhere. They've been fostered somewhere. There's some kind of a fear or something behind these words. And I find that it helps to take the edge off the anger and all of the obsessing and all of that. So I just want to end with talking about the new understanding I came to that original person I was talking to you about, and the band can go ahead and come up. That original person I was talking to you about at the very beginning, who wanted to talk about how, illegitimate was to identify as an LGBT people, and our civil rights, our liberation movement wasn't legitimate, and all those things. And I said, I'm going to try to think of this person as a human and ask myself, where is this coming from, right? Like, this is someone who legitimately does think that they're being reasonable. Like, can I recognize that humanity, that this person does think that they're being reasonable? Why is it? How did this person get that way? And here's what I realized. There's something called social norming and ethical norms. And what that means is that the more the people around you say that something is the ethical and right thing, the more that that's going to seem reasonable to you, if not absolutely the truth. And so this person has engaged in all of these conversations with people who claim to be educated but weren't, who were saying, this is really just a social construct and nothing more. And, this is really illegitimate, and it's just social pressure, and all of these. And he's engaged in these conversations over and over again, and that's all that he has heard, and that's all that he has known. So the fact that I come in and I say, actually, that's wrong, that sends a signal to him, this is someone who's unreasonable. Because I know that these are reasonable conversations to have, and this person won't even have them. And that's a result of the way we've all dehumanized each other, you guys. It's a direct result of the fact that we've all said, that's their group, and this is my group, and I'm not going to talk to you because you're absurd. And all of that leads all of us to being collectively blind and to not seeing and not understanding. And it leaves me angry and this guy thinking I'm an idiot, and I'm sure telling everybody he knows. And I just don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to interact with people that way anymore. And I don't want to experience my relationships and people that way anymore. I want to find a way to get past all the argument and all the haze and all the hate and all the assumptions to the humanity of the person in front of me. That's what I want to do. That's my goal. It does not come very naturally to a person like me. So y'all got to send some prayers my way or some pleasant thoughts or something. So I want to say a prayer, and I know whatever your religious beliefs may be, and as much as I don't sometimes even understand everything about prayer, prayer to me signifies our connectedness. And I want to say a prayer together as we meditate and think about these ideas. Creator, I thank you for being the creator, the father, the mother of every human being and every animal and every creature and all that we see and know. And I ask that you help us to recognize and see that connectedness and shared humanity that we all have. We love you. Help us to love each other. Amen.